up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rodeo Wagon Podcast, brought to you by the Western Edge app and produced by Cosmic Cowboys. We're here with Denton Fugate. What's been happening, Denton?
Oh, not much. Just being able to rodeo a little bit.
Have you been going pretty hard? I've been seeing some stuff on Facebook and Instagram.
I've been. I came home a week and a half ago, and I've taken it a little bit easier since then. But before then, I was going pretty hard.
Yeah, and you took a year off, you were saying?
Yeah, whenever I broke my leg in 2021 in October, and I was out for a full year, all the way up until this past October, I guess.
So you made the NFR in 2020 then? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Man, time flies, doesn't it?
That's no kidding. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years ago.
It feels like it was just last year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Man, how did you get so explain for everybody the whole like part coming up to the NFR and that crazy intro that you did with the wild hair and everything. I got to hear that story because I haven't heard it.
All right. So, um, whenever you make the NFR your first time as a rookie, or whenever you show up to the NFR as a rookie or whatever, your first time, your first bull, if you fall off of him, then the other guys in the locker room get to pick some sort of some sort of prank that you have to do. It could be anything from shaving your heads happened. Somehow I got the outfit, and uh, they just someone had to have a spray tan. There's been all sorts of crazy things, but I got dressed up in a blonde wig and a huge sombrero, which the sombrero was kind of my fault because I was riding to the arena with Tyler Bingham, and I stopped at a gas station, and I was like, "Phew, at least we don't have to wear that, or at least I don't have to wear that thing." And he's like, "Well, you do now." And he spent $20 on this huge hat, and they put a crown on it and made me dress up like a rodeo queen.
That's awesome. I had no idea. I thought it was something you came up with. And I wouldn't
Oh,
have been surprised. I wouldn't have if anybody would have done that on their own, it would be Denton Fugate.
no chance. I didn't want my my grand entry horse that I was riding was like this thing was so fast. Whenever you came in like past the 90, past the buck and shoots, this thing was gone. It was going just as fast as it could. And this big old hat that I had to have it tied on because if it came off, you got fined. I had it like tied, I had a stampede string and it was choking me all the way around there. And it was like a big parachute. I couldn't get it down until we stopped. But it was pretty scary, really.
How do they come up with the horses for that? Like, are they just random horses, or do you even know?
The like stock contractors have a group of like I guess horses that they use for like parades and stuff, and that's kind of how they ended up doing it. But it's random whenever you get there. You don't get to pick your horse unless you bring one, I guess.
Well, I've seen a few of them buck. I think I'd probably bring mine next year.
Yeah, it was that was probably the scariest part because there's so much that can go wrong, and there's so many people going so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess at that point, because that's at the intro when you did that, you didn't have your spurs or anything on at that point. But
Uh,
if after you went around and they go around there, that's sketchy too, because you can't if you on a horse you don't know and it starts going, freaking sprinting and bucking, like you can't really stick your spurs into them.
and you definitely don't want to be the guy that wins around in the bull ride and then gets bucked off of the victory lap horse. You'll never let that one down.
Yeah, no joke. Man, that's wild. Do they fine you for like so do a group of guys pay the fine for putting whatever, or do they like because you'd think you get fined just for wearing all of that stuff, or do they
Well,
not?
there wasn't really anything that they could technically fine me for, I guess, because I had a button up shirt, I had a cowboy hat. I don't know what all the rest of it they could have got, but uh, Boudreaux, he wanted to lead me in the grand entry. Like I would just be able to hold on to the saddle horn and not be able to hold on to my reins. And that we put the stop to that pretty quick because we knew we got fined pretty good for that one probably.
Sure.
Okay. Something would have went south and Boudreaux would have let my horse go. It'd have been bad.
Well, I guess everybody knows there's a standard. If you do all of that, if you want to, really be outspoken and really stand out, you're not going to get fined for it.
Yes. I'm not gonna say that. I might have just slipped under the radar with that one.
Yeah, that's nuts. I'm always curious too, and I've been wanting to talk to you anyway about like, because I've always I went the route, the PBR route, when I first started, and so I never even bought my PRCA card, never did the rodeo. Of course, I didn't grow up in it, so there wasn't. Everybody talks about that rodeo atmosphere and falling in love with that, and since I just came as a fan, that wasn't really a part of me anyway. So, like, what's that process with making the NFR, and what's that process look like? Because, from what I hear, it's different than circuit finals and all of that. Like, you could literally not make a circuit finals and still make the NFR, and vice versa. You have a lot of guys that make the circuit finals and aren't even in contention for making the NFR. What does that look like when you're starting out with your card and that process?
Whenever I started out, I pretty much stayed in the circuit that I was in, which whenever I started, I was living in Missouri. So it was a Great Lakes circuit for me. And that gave me a few states where I could go and compete at the pro rodeos. And then I could qualify for the circuit finals whenever I was on my permit, which I knew I couldn't go to the NFR on my permit, and I was way in over my head whenever I first started too. Competing with the big dogs, I had to learn that too. So that was a chance for you to be able to qualify for a sort of a big finals, but not have to travel all across the U.S. and whatnot. So you could stay more local, and that's also goes the same for the people that have a job through the week and are more your weekend type rodeoers. So they also have the finals that they can qualify for.
Yeah, definitely. And when you talked about the permit and stuff, like, can you make the NFR on your permit? And like, I know you have to like get to where you qualify for the bigger rodeos to make the money to make the NFR, which is obviously based on money. Like, what does that look like for somebody buying your permit? Is it a 1 year, or do you get into some of the bigger deals if you enter them as a permit holder? And what's the difference between, is there a difference between having your permit and declaring yourself like you're rookie?
Okay. Whenever whenever I first started, I rodeoed 2 years on my permit, which you can rodeo up to 4 years on it if you're in college. But since I was in, since I went to college for 2 years, I just rodeoed on my permit while I was in college and trying to college rodeo and pro rodeo just a little bit whenever I was able to. And that allowed me to fill my permit, which takes $1,500. And then where I ended up, they have a permit finals that they take the top five in each event, and uh, then you go to Vegas during the NFR, and they kind of have like I guess it's a top five shootout, I guess, and that's pretty much what the permit system is kind of built on, is to teach the younger guys how to rodeo and enter, and it also just gives them a chance to qualify for the permit finals, which is a pretty awesome deal whenever you're that young.
Yeah, for
But
sure. And
at,
then the rookie, what's kind of that whole ordeal?
Okay, so you can you can just fill your permit right off the bat, or however long it takes you, and like through the year. If per se it takes you 2 rodeos, then you can
Is it how
call
much
it
do you have to win to fill your permit?
1,500.
1,500. Okay.
So you can do that. You stay on one bull, and you're more than likely going to fill it most of the time. So you can buy your permit automatically, or you buy your rookie card automatically, and then that makes you eligible for the Rookie of the Year and the NFR. So then you better rodeo as hard as you can, because you only got one shot to win the rookie.
Do they give you any like do some of these bigger rodeos take so many rookies?
Uh, there's a majority of rodeos that take a percentage of rookies, and like not your real big rodeos, but your medium sized rodeos and smaller, they take a percentage of permit holders too.
Okay.
But nowadays, like Fort Worth and San Antonio, they don't take permits, I believe. But whenever I was a permit holder, they used to.
Oh, that's interesting. And what does that look like when you are planning on going hard for the NFR and scheduling that? And I mean, I've seen different guys and they doing it different ways. I've seen from just watching you and some of the places you're going, Cole Fisher, and then some guys that are doing it, maybe once you've gained that standings where the next year you're guaranteed to get into those bigger events, you can maybe go to fewer rodeos, but you're going to the big ones. Like, what does that generally look like? Options.
Whenever, all right. So, per se, you had a good starting year on your permit. You filled it. You won quite a bit of money, and you bought your rookie card right off the bat. All right. And your main goal is to make the NFR and win Rookie of the Year. So you want to make sure you get into the big rodeos right off the bat, like Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, well, Denver. All the big winter rodeos. So they have a few Texas rodeos, and right at the beginning of October. So what I tried to do was I tried to go to a couple of the smaller, like 3 to 5,000 added rodeos, to get in the top 10 or 15 right off the bat. Because at that point in the year, most of the guys are either ready to go home that have been fighting to qualify for the NFR, or they're sore and just tired of rodeoing. So they're kind of taking a break, and that gives the guys that seen earlier on, like me this year, that I knew I wasn't gonna really be in the fight to make the finals. So I I kind of took a break and healing up and staying fresh. So whenever it comes October, I'll be ready to hit them hard right off the beginning, so I can get into them big rodeos also.
So really, October to November is like a huge starting block for guys that haven't already qualified for the NFR that year.
Yeah, and or that wasn't in the top, you know, 25, 30 from the year before, because them guys will get into Denver, Fort Worth, all of them, no matter what. But if you get in there and you're in the top, 10, then you'll be able to get into everything, and more than likely be able to get into Houston. And them rodeos right there are game changers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, heck, you won. How much did you win at Houston? 20,000,
I,
20.
I won whenever I won San Antonio. I
San
won
Antonio.
24. Yeah, they canceled Houston whenever I was doing there.
So 24,000 at San Antonio. Dang,
Yeah,
that's a good chunk of change. Hey, that man, that's crazy too, because there's a few of them that pay out so much that if you just win a couple of them, if you win Calgary, how much is that?
50,000,
1,000.
and you be 100,000. I'm not sure if it went back to 100 this year or not, but That's life changing.
Really, you win. If you were to win two of those big roadies, you just about make the NFR. Outside of how many? What's the requirement? You have to go to so many.
You have to go to 40 rodeos for your Extreme Bulls money to count.
40. Okay, and it can be any 40 for the
Yeah.
extreme. What do the extreme bulls pay? They pay pretty good too, don't they?
Yeah, it just depends. They have to be at least 10,000 added, and then they can be like Ellensburg. I'm pretty sure it's 100,000 added, if not more.
It's kind of like touring pros and the PBO. There's kind of a minimum there, and then they can be as high. Do they have? Well, I guess they don't go by a point system, so it's just money earned. Do you win? Is it all? How do they calculate money at each rodeo? Like if you're the only guy to stay on, does all the money count? How does that work?
Yeah, that counts. It's they they kind of had a big discussion a few years ago. It's probably been 4 or 5 years ago that it didn't count, and all the bull riders were like, if you stay on, that's your money. It should count towards the standings, and that was kind of a touchy topic for a handful of guys that some didn't agree and some did agree. But yeah, if you're the only one to stay on at a rodeo or even the NFR, like last year in the 10th round, Tristan Hutchins was the only guy to stay on and won like $98,000. That counted towards your year-end standings.
Man,
That
that can change the game going in. I would realistically, when you go into the NFR, how many guys really have a shot to win the world title? Because obviously, yeah, one round you can win close to 100K if you're the only guy to stay on.
yeah, it's whenever you go in there, like before the first bull on paper, it's anybody's ball game. And things don't just play out
Right.
like that. But on paper, it's anybody's ball game whenever you walk in there. There's so much money, it's crazy.
That is, yeah, you can win a lot of money at the NFR. Heck, you can win quite a bit of money during the regular season.
Oh yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
Generally, what 15's right around 100,000? Is that
Yeah, I'd say anymore it's 100 to 110,000 is probably where you're gonna have to be to make the finals.
and it's tight between probably what 12 and 20.
I would say yeah, probably 12 and 17. They're really really tight, and the top 20 they all have a shot in it. A weekend could really flip around the whole standings.
That's crazy too, because you think, oh, these guys are under pressure competing for a world title, and a lot of people think of that. I bet it's more pressure for the guys that are on that line coming in to the cutoff date. I bet that pressure is crazy.
That was terrible. I stayed up the the last night of the regular season. I'd stayed up all night pretty much just because I was 15th and there was a shot that a couple of guys could pass me, but I stayed up watching the Cowboy Channel all night, and I was like, "Oh, come on, come on, come on!" And then I seen it, and that was a super cool moment for me.
What number were you? Were you 15 or you were 15?
Yeah,
So you were
I
sweating bullets.
yeah,
Yeah, that's nuts. Man, that's the whole rodeo world is so far. It's so different than the whole PBR and the bull riding world. Like they're not even close to the same as far as what
it
it
really.
takes, the scheduling wise, and like we're gone, 2 to 3 days, a
Mm.
weekend, and then you're home for 4 weekends. And I watched, you guys traveling, and it's like nuts. How many miles do you think you put on a vehicle? And I say that I think I put 49,000 miles between January and May, but
Yeah,
I know that we're doing it a little different. So our miles are more like I'll be in California this weekend, next weekend I'll be in, freaking Maine or something like that, where you guys are hitting runs a lot. But
I
you're
was gonna say say our miles are pretty similar-ish. We'll have more like all year, but that time frame, like I would say it's pretty similar. We might put on a few more, but you're right what you said, like Maine to California and all that. That's you guys do a lot of that, but you're mainly flying it, don't you?
You know what? We've drove a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, me and Keith and Dakota. Zane Cook. That's kind of this area. Quentin Vaught. He went there for a while. We group up and drive. I mean, heck, earlier this year we started off in South Carolina, so we drove up to South Carolina. Then during the week we drove to Denver, and then we drove back to South Carolina, and then home, and then over in Ohio or something like that. So we do quite a bit of driving,
Yeah, that's
but we're only getting on so many bulls. Like you're getting on bulls every single day and hitting runs. So you're
mhm.
like even on the average weekend we're gone. We'll leave on Thursday and we'll be back on Sunday. The reason I like to fly a lot is because I hate being away from home, like when I don't have to be. And if I fly, I know I have to stay the night and get a plane flight in the morning. Where a lot of times, if I'm within 15 hours, I'm like, heck, I could be home in the morning time if I just
Yeah,
drove.
that's true.
Now you're a zombie when you get home because you've gotten no sleep, but you're at least present and you're still at the house. So that's probably the big deal why we probably drive more than anything. The
Yeah,
real far ones, like earlier this year, I was supposed to be out in like Greenville, South Carolina. I don't know, Columbus. I think it was Columbus, South Carolina. And then I got the call like on a Tuesday, hey, we want you on tour in Sacramento. And I flew. I'm not going to drive by myself to Sacramento because I'm going to get home sooner. You know, fly.
yeah, when you're
Yeah.
being tired.
So
But yeah, man, I'm with you on the difference in the PBR and the rodeoing, and like I've seen it a little bit, but I got to go to Lamar this past weekend, and like you could you could see like the PBR group, you know, they were they seemed serious and everything, and then like the kind of the group that just was like me and Maverick Smith, we entered and we'd been rodeoing together, and we're kind of just goofing off and cutting up a little bit, a lot more laid back seeming, and then you could kind of see that the PBR guys were like more. I don't want to say more focused because
no, it's not. It's not more of a focus, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, and I don't know why. I don't know why that's how it is.
mhm,
I'm not sure. Maybe it's because the atmosphere of a rodeo is kind of more laid back in its atmosphere. Like, and
I
you're not, it's not just bull riding. So you're sitting there,
mhm.
you better have fun if you're sitting there for a full rodeo.
Yeah, because you got 2.5 hours at least of stuff that you're just going through. You watch the bareback riding, and then you got a while, and you're just sitting there warming your rope up, and then you run out of things to do. So I guess you kind of gotta pick on somebody or just mess around a little bit.
I wonder too, and so I've noticed this, like one of the difference, and this probably could be a big aspect of it, is rodeoing and rodeo guys are going every day. And when you're riding bulls every day and you're going in the summer run, even if you're going to bull ridings, but you're getting on every single day,
Mm-hmm.
eventually you're just so accustomed to everything. It's just like that. Whereas when you're riding just on the weekend, it's almost like it builds up a pressure because like that's it. Like that you have this weekend and you haven't been in that flow of just that atmosphere all the time.
That makes sense. And and whenever you're doing it day in and day out, you kind of gotta. you got to do something, or it gets, it turns into work if you're not trying to enjoy it, especially on the couple days or so where things aren't going so good. If you just show up and you're having a having a bad time, it sure ain't gonna get no better. But
Another thing could be too is, in the rodeo, most of the rodeos feed you afterwards, and maybe it
mhm.
makes bull riders more happy. Maybe they're more loose and relaxed. Where we know we're like, if I go to a PBR event, I better not step my foot in that catering room because it's not for me. If I want to eat, I better stay on.
That's funny.
I think Dakota, I don't, it was this year, one year, I think it was this past year, and it was
Mhm.
maybe Albuquerque or something. And he's like, oh yeah, man, there's free food back there. I'm like, yeah, not for us. He went back in there and start chowing down. But he'd been, Dakota kind of been rodeoing too, and it's just kind
Was that or was that at the PBR?
of, that was at the PBR.
Oh,
Yeah, he went into the catering room at the PBR.
that's
And
awesome.
it's not for us. But both the rodeos, they have a full deal afterwards.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I like that about the rodeos too, because like you sit around there and yeah, they'll feed you, and then you get to talk and hang out and meet a bunch of people. That's that's one thing that I really like about being able to rodeo and pick where you get to go. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite.
Yeah, because we're PBR at the same group. The beginning of the year, you kind of see like, okay, who are the new faces and who are the guys that are gonna go, and then after the second or third week, it's the same. And from year to year, it's pretty much the same. But there's always new guys coming up, and then some guys will take a year off, and then you'll see them again, and vice versa. Whereas rodeo, you probably are seeing a lot more people throughout that year.
There's a pretty good set of young kids coming up right now that are impressive too.
Cool.
It's fun to watch over there.
Yeah, and that's really cool because I they need to figure out as far as bucking bulls, they need to figure out like the program for kids coming up, because it's like you get on social media and it's like 16, 15-year-olds do not need to be getting on this stuff. Then there's stuff that's like, okay, that makes sense. Mini bulls that are bucking hard.
Yeah, and there's no way that them kids are gonna be able to stay on one. Everything's going entirely too fast. Shoot, I would have trouble riding some of them mini bulls.
Yeah, no joke. And you could probably get on them and they wouldn't even say anything. The mustache, that may throw them off, but Bob Mitchell, maybe he's kind of made it to where people are like, well, maybe he is 12. Because Bob looks like he's 40 and they let him buy his, you know, he probably could have entered PBRs at, 13.
He could have probably.
That could be, early retirement for you, when you're like, you know what, I'm not ready to go to the NFR, but I think I could make some money on minis.
I'm gonna stay around the house and ride some mini bulls.
You could probably make the angles and everything where people wouldn't even know it's a mini bull.
Yeah,
There certainly are some that buck hard enough.
man, yeah.
And when you were starting off with, I mean, was that even really a thing? Like even mini bulls with that?
They they kind of they were kind of just starting to come around whenever I got on a couple of them whenever I was like 13. Like I was almost too old for the mini bulls whenever they started coming around, but uh, I never was a very big fan of them. I didn't really think they bucked very hard, and I thought they was real choppy, and it just felt terrible.
Yeah, I just talked to somebody that was maybe it was Mason Moody. He was
Hmm.
saying the same thing. He's like, it doesn't even feel like it doesn't feel right. And now that he said that and you said that, I know what he's talking about because Quincy McDonald, he had a
Hmm.
bull down at his house that was black and super choppy like that. Feet didn't come off the ground very much and just super choppy and just didn't even feel like that bull is not going to help you really.
No, it just was terrible. And I remember whenever they first started coming around, they was trying to say that it was going to be better because they had bigger shoulders and would feel like an actual bull. I was like, okay, maybe. And then after getting on a couple, and it just was terrible. It's like, man, if this is what big bulls feel like, I don't know if I want to do it.
The only thing that maybe could help a kid out, and I don't know, is like talking to Kurt Check, and he talked about, because he's got his boys coming up, and I
Yeah.
remember Audie and who's talking about size really matters to kids. Like you could put them on one that bucks really hard, but it's a
Hmm.
small, steer or whatever, and kids, will get on them all day long. But if you get a big steer, you know, a bigger sized, mini bull or whatever,
Hmm.
they don't want to get on them just because it's a size difference. So maybe if you had a, super calm mini bull that had the size, it could help kids kind of get over, mentally the size part of it. I don't know.
I think that would be all right. Just something slow and jump kicks. Where they could, use the size of it. I could see that helping, but
Like, is there even like I know in the stock contracting world, and that's changed tremendously since I started, and for sure since you did.
yeah.
Like it's a whole different world now. So it's a money game. Is there any money in getting breeding rank mini bulls, or is that just a pride thing?
I I haven't heard of there being a whole lot of money in it, but it's not really.
Yeah, I don't pay attention a whole lot to that.
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know. I think it would almost be more of a pride thing. I don't even really. I don't know. I don't really care for watching mini bulls because I don't like seeing kids get threw off. I'd rather see a kid ride something that is very low caliber, and actually help instead of just putting a kid's head in the dirt and
Yeah, and
and not.
the value of just staying on is huge. Even
Oh,
just staying on, like this past year I spent when I came back, with all the team stuff, and I was injured last year, I had knee surgery, and I came back, and so I just stayed and went to, rodeos around the house and stuff, and I rode everything. Like I think I fell off one bull, maybe two in a 3 month span. Like that just breeds confidence. It doesn't even matter if you're going 75
oh,
to 85.
you felt great doing it, like you you knew that what you was getting on, you might not have been the rankest thing you ever rode, but I bet you was making sure you was riding it perfect.
100%. Yeah, I think that part of it, and I get like, there's also a skill development where you do need to get on, at a point you need to start getting on better bulls, and I think in the practice pen, for guys starting off, there's a time and place to do that and make sure you're pushing yourself, but only to a certain degree because these ranked bulls nowadays are hard on your body. It's it's way harder on your body than getting on. If you get on 82 point bulls all day long, it's not that bad. You start getting on
Mm.
88 plus bulls, 87 plus bulls nowadays, like that takes a toll on your body if you're doing that over and over again.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, you might not think of it, but every time you hit the ground, it's a little bit more wear and tear on you. Just every yank you get, which is just part of it. But
Yeah,
I,
100.
I and I agree with you. I think that you got to know when to test yourself, and you got to be willing to test yourself. But you also need to have your basics down, or or you can understand what you're testing before you just get in over your head too.
Yeah,
You
me and
know.
Nathan, we talked about like the value of the practice pen. If you're changing anything, hey, even
Hmm.
riding those better bulls, like it's a different, almost it's like a different feel. The form isn't, the form doesn't change, but there's certain things you have to like emphasize on really ranked bulls, like utilizing your knees on a really ranked bull that's kicking and hitting hard. People don't realize that two bulls on a video can look the same, but a bull
Yeah.
that's hitting really hard, you better be able to pull your knees up to absorb that hit because even if you're getting over the front end, like when they hit like that, they're pulling you forwards. So
Right. Yeah.
that's a difference between an 82 point bull that, may not be hitting that hard, and you may not have to throw your knees up. But if you look at all the great bull riders, they're using their knees and they're using them well.
Yeah.
Of course,
Sure.
that's not a problem for you. Not an issue. It's not
Not a problem.
you know. Like that's only people that struggle with their feet, really. So if that's not an issue for you, it's just not.
I got that care of.
Oh man. I'll never forget Keith getting whooped down in Springfield on a bull you'd been whooped down on too. Do you remember that bull?
I honestly don't, but
The black
I know
bull.
I know which bull it was, and I seen the video of Keith get knocked out. But the last thing I remember from the night that he knocked me out was me putting my rope on a black and white muley, and Mason was like, "No, that's the wrong bull. That's the bounty bull. The one you drew is the little black backhorn behind him." And I was like, "Oh, okay." That's the last thing I remember. I couldn't even tell you what the bull really looked like at that point. And then the next week, Keith had him drew, and he said he did the same thing.
Same thing. And it was so funny because Keith got whooped down twice or three times, and every single time he'd just go to the side and then get whooped down and then go to the other side. And afterward, he split his chin up all the way. And a guy came up and said that was the most cowboy grittiest ride I've ever seen. And he walked away, and me and Jeremiah, we just started dying laughing. Like Keith couldn't have got off that bull if he wanted to. And then
Yeah,
Jeremiah convinced him to get on again, and he did get KO'd in the short round.
oh yeah, I remember whenever they got back. That's whenever I was going to college with Keith, and they got back and they told me that story. And that's whenever me and Keith would do it. We'd put him in there to stay.
He was all about that. He was all about it. He's the one that taught me how to do it. Of course, for me, like all of that, which I have such long legs, I couldn't put him in there to stay if I tried. Just not even.
Right.
I couldn't do it. But there for a minute, I definitely tried. And I'd catch my belt straps just as much as I'd catch my knots, to be honest. But we went through that phase. He's the one that taught me how to line it up on the drop barrel and all of that. But when I switched over to a Brazilian rope, it was like it wasn't American rope. For some reason, you can line them suckers up perfect, but with a Brazilian rope, it's a whole different ordeal.
Yeah. Whenever that's how I got taught to ride bulls whenever I was little, and that was terrible, terrifying.
I want to know the guy that said that, son. You got to learn how to stay on.
Well, I could ride steers a little bit, but whenever they would change directions and spin, and I was like, "Why don't you try this? Just do this." And I was like, "Okay." It works sometimes, but when it didn't, it was terrible.
I think it's funny too. You see these old timers, that we watched on tour and everything prior to, and dude, everybody was doing it. I mean, everybody.
Oh
But
yeah.
nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it.
No, and how they did it was terrifying. They'd put their feet in the rope and they would fry on that rope, I was like, golly, them old videos.
Like
It's
JD
amazing.
when he came out of retirement for that one deal. And
Yes.
he was strapped, man. He wasn't coming off until he got KO'd.
And you knew he knew it was coming too.
Uh-huh. But heck,
Oh,
man, it's like Keith, when he taught me that, he said, look, it comes down to this. You can't be scared to win. I don't know who taught him that, but you can't be. Yeah, that was you. Yeah. And he meant it too.
we called it financial aid in college.
Financial aid, yep. Yeah, you know what though? Back in the day too, they did it without a helmet.
Men were.
They meant it back then. Nowadays, you can get a helmet that'll you just about can freaking. I mean, unless that helmet comes off, you're good.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that helmet can come off. I had the Invincible. You were at that deal, that Outlaw exclusive deal. I remember,
Mhm.
and I had my knots there too. I was all about it, and I got pulled down, and that sucker's horn bent the bars and ripped that Invincible off my head.
Mhm. Them helmets are wild.
Yeah, yeah, Invincible. Even these 100Xs, at least the bigger ones, the regular size. Some guys are using. I know Andrew. He went to the smaller version. Cooper. He's used his for a while. It's kind of a smaller, lighter, compact 100X. You can't really tell if you're watching on TV, even if you're in person. But if you
Hmm.
really look at it, you can tell it's considerably a little bit smaller and lighter, probably a little bit less protective. But
Yeah. Well, you know, you really don't want to use them.
yeah,
You don't plan on using them. But that's how I am. I finally switched to a Bauer shell instead of my Too Tough shell,
okay.
and I don't know. I've had my Too Tough since I probably had it for like 8 or 9 years. That shell needed replaced bad anyway, but I finally I finally did one, and I think it feels way more comfortable. And I think it's kept me awake a couple times whenever that Too Tough would have put me to sleep.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, like especially if I'm talking to anybody about helmets. 100X,
Mm,
as far as getting stepped on, as far as getting horned in the head, like it's
mm,
the most bulletproof helmet out there. As far
yeah.
as getting whooped down, I think that weight does come into play. I've been knocked out in the 100X from just
Mm,
hitting the ground more than I have using any other helmet. But I've also
really?
been stepped on in the head where, I could have, I get up and get on another one, get on three of them, like it doesn't impact you at all. So it's a give or take, on that end. I used to Bauer for a minute. I actually
Yeah.
stopped using the Bauer. The time I did it was one weekend me and Dakota were going to Dan Cook Steel, and then the next
Mm,
weekend to ABBI Classic Velocity. And I got this bull, and it was the first time I went back to a Brazilian rope, and I wasn't used to it. And he went out and freaking clacked him, and I rolled right underneath him, landed on my back, and he came down, stepped right on my temple, and
oh God.
put a big hole in the bower, ripped it off my head. If I wouldn't have had a helmet on, that would have probably killed me because it was right there. It would have probably killed me. I would have definitely been in a bad state. But um, the next night I had to get on again, and
Mm,
so should have I? Absolutely not. But the 100X people are like, "Hey, we got you," because it was in Kansas City. So I went there,
oh.
put that helmet on, and I got on the bull. That Quentin Vaught in Decatur was the only guy to ride and won like 15 grand,
Mhm.
and he whooped me down. And did KO'd me. I was out for a minute. I ended up having Monday, like my feet were like I could tell something was wrong and went to the hospital and they were saying that my brain bled quite a bit, which a concussion it always does, but it was a pretty bad one. So I ended up
I
taking
think
3 weeks
I
off.
think I remember that one. I think Keith told me he was pretty goofy for like a little bit there,
Yeah.
wasn't you? After
Uh,
that one?
that one man, there've been a few of them. That one was bad. I got on one at Reno.
Mhm.
I was like 7, 8, and I got KO'd. They said I was out for like 5 to 10 minutes, and Keith was with me then, and I didn't even like the first thing I remember was I remember waking up my in my bed, and it was actually at somebody else's house because we were staying with a friend of ours, and
Yeah.
waking up and looking at my arm, and I had the IV mark, and I'm like, dang it! And then I kept telling Keith because I was wide awake at that point. It was like I had a perfect night's sleep, and I kept waking up and being like, "Hey, let's play PUBG." And then the next
That's crazy.
weekend we were in, so that was in Reno, Nevada. The next weekend we were in Baltimore, Maryland, and I took second and went 2 for 3 and rode great. I've never been KO'd outside of that one where I got on again, and I really shouldn't have.
Mhm.
I was probably in a bad state as it was,
Yeah.
but I never like missed a weekend after. I think if you,
Uh, no, I hadn't either. I got knocked out pretty good in Poplar Bluff a couple years ago. and that one messed with me pretty good. But after a couple of days, I was all right too. But
This year I had one that happened in Bangor, Maine. It's right before the first combine that they did. And that was a weird one.
mhm,
Like I didn't get knocked out. I uh I just landed weird, but I had a concussion, and like it was the
mhm.
first time I threw up afterwards and everything, and that one held on to me. It was Monday before that one. It's just a weird deal how sometimes you can get flat KO'd and be good,
Yeah,
and you can just hit weird. And
that's how it was. That's how it was for me. But and I didn't really know what it like. I didn't never really had it happen before. I've been knocked out worse than that, you know. And but that one, I puked afterwards too, and it scared me a little bit. I was like, this is makes you feel all fuzzy and stuff. I hated it.
I told Dakota the next day, I said, "Man, like if I get any worse, I think I'm gonna have you take me to the hospital. I don't want to go, but like there's the point where it's like, you better."
Your head's pretty.
Especially with that head deal and you don't really know what's going on. Of course, I haven't had the internal stuff. Casey, he got stepped on in his guts, and that was a bad ordeal.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think
Then
a couple hours after,
do what?
that was a couple hours after when he's like decided, hey, I need to go, something's wrong. It's a weird deal. Just knowing your body and kind of knowing like something's not right here.
Yeah, just yeah. That is crazy.
And I think too, for some people, it's probably not weird, but we're so used to injuries and go in pain. Like, you know, 2 of the last 3 years, I've broken my leg, and it's not like bad. Like I'll break a fibula. One year I broke my fib, and that's
Hmm.
a small bone, and that sucks. But it's not like something that I kept riding with it. I braced it up. The worst part was you don't try to land on your feet. Worst part was being in the chute. If they leaned up against you.
Yeah.
But so you get used to that kind of stuff, and then I think it makes it. And too, if you do go to the hospital, like it ain't cheap to do that.
No, and most of the time, like if it ain't nothing major, they're just gonna put a brace on it and tell you send you on anyway, you know.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And heck, even going to doctors, you're going to the right guy. Tandy, freaking awesome. Anybody Tandy refers you to, awesome. You go to somebody else and they don't understand the sport, like it's just a different deal. I just broke my leg, and the doctor I went was in house, and so it's going to be so much cheaper. It's considerably cheaper. She specialized in ankles. Uh, did a great job with my ankle and my leg. However, she's like, yeah, it'll be about 6 months, maybe for a normal person, but you have a
Yeah,
doctor like Tandy, and he gets something. So when a doctor's looking at it, they're like, what's the risk of you coming back? Well, for an average person, if you go back to doing anything crazy, that risk is super high. But a guy like
right.
Tandy, he knows, okay, well, there's already a risk in getting on bulls, and you're at the point now where there's no more risk to you. You're already
Mhm.
at a, at this level of risk, and now you're at this point where it doesn't add any more risk. So it's kind of up to you, what you want to do. But
And speaking of picking who you get to send or be sent to, or who Tandy sent you to, whenever I broke mine, uh, they life flighted me, and they were gonna take me to Hot Springs, I think it was, and then like somehow turned the helicopter around and took me to Jonesboro. So they land, and I'm like, okay, well, here we go. And I don't know how bad it is. Everybody's just like, yeah, you got broken leg. I'm like, okay. They got me all fixed up, or like where I'm not feeling nothing. And I was like, so it's broke? And they're like, it's pretty broke. I'm like, okay. So how long do you think this is gonna take to heal? And they're like, you broke it pretty good. It's gonna be a minute. I was like, okay. So I kind of accepted it there. And then after they got me, after they did the surgery, I went home and I thought I was gonna be on the mend and I was gonna be real tough. and start walking right away, and or like, you know, put a little weight on it. Nah, that that got my attention, and eventually everybody's like, "Man, I feel like you got to be getting around a little bit better than this." Travis was like, "You should definitely be putting more weight on it than this," and I was like, I guess I'm just a sissy or something, but this thing hurts bad." And then all of a sudden, I was going to physical therapy, and I had just this like knot pop up on the like front of my shin, and I had a plate trying to come out the top of my shin because it was rejecting it. So because the doctor got an infection in there.
Dang. And it was open wound when you broke
Yeah.
it. Dang. Yeah, and I've even heard of a lot of guys like with their shoulders, and they'll go to somebody other than Tandy, and they'll do
Mhm.
like a type of surgery that like won't hold for bull riders, and then instead of 6 months, it's a year, just
Yeah.
because
And then
they redo it.
yeah. And so on mine, they had to go back in there and uh, take all the stuff back out, scrape the infection, take a bone from my hip and put it in my leg because the infection was like eating away at my bone, I guess. There's some crazy stuff. I'm fortunate to have a leg, to be honest.
Yeah, that's no joke. Man, they're the football player that something like that happened with, and he played like one more game or one more year and then retired. I forget what his name was, but Nick Folks maybe. No, that's a kicker, I believe. Anyway, yeah, I know the open wound stuff. That's pretty nuts. When I just broke mine, um, I'm lucky it was an open wound because he stepped right on that sucker, and I went to go take a step and wasn't there. When I jumped up on the fence, and I looked down at it, and my leg is completely set. My foot's completely sideways. I'm like, nope, I don't think it's supposed to be like that. And then there's a guy from a fan because I jumped up on the chute, right? Or on the
Mhm.
fence. And a fan just comes up right in my face and he's like, you won, all this stuff. I'm like, man, please get away from me right now. Because honestly, I don't care.
Keith, Keith was telling me about you trying to get him talked into going that bull ride too.
Yeah, yep, yeah. I ended up getting on 4 bulls that day, re-riding. Because it was
Oh,
a,
you too?
what?
You got a rewrite also?
Yeah, so I got, well, not on that bull. I got,
Oh,
it was a rodeo and a bull riding, and I didn't like understand that it was a two-head bull riding. So it was an NFPB and then MRCA. And the day before, I was entered in the rodeo, and so I just got a one bull. And then the next day, they double headed the bull riding. So I got on a rodeo bull, and then on my first NFPB bull, I got a re-ride, and then so I ended up getting on 4, which it wasn't terrible. It's not like you're getting on. Actually, it was terrible, and I'll tell you why. Because bulls that aren't bucking very hard suck to get on.
they're
It's like
hard.
10 times the work. Like
Yeah.
you get on a bull that's just wish wash, jumping out, running down the
Mhm.
pin, ducking and diving, and you get off and you felt like you just did a legit workout. And you get on a bucking bull and it's just like eye of the hurricane. You're like, man, that felt great.
But like sometimes whenever you're doing it really good, it's over before you even, it's like it happens so fast. And like you, don't get me wrong, you remember some of it, but there's some of it you're like, yep, that
Yeah,
just happened.
yeah, it just happened. Yeah, yeah, no joke. And bulls, it's when it's so intense like that, it's just your brain and it's processing. That's why practice
Oh
pen,
yeah.
knowing form is a big deal going into this. It's one reason I use the buck right, and to me, it's like a treadmill for bull riders, And you don't even have to do anything fancy. For me, it's just the timing and stuff, and just kind of that feel of like doing moves over and over and over again.
Right, yeah. Repetition, your mind like remembers it, and then whenever it gets going that fast, and that's what your mind remembers, and that's what comes out.
Yeah, and sometimes like my mind will go on one thing, like if your feet like are kind of on the end, like your mind immediately goes to making, releasing,
Yeah.
making in front of you or whatever it is.
Hmm.
I don't know what guys like Sean Willingham and those style riders, Craig Jackson back in the day, don't know where their mind went. Like
Yeah.
guys just lay back every single time, no matter what.
Hang on and kick. That guy was so much fun to watch.
I have a slow motion ride of Sean it was the last year he rode, and we were uh oh well, you talk about driving, so there's two parts to this story. So we were at a deal of Chad Burgers in Sheridan, Wyoming, and he went 90 on this bull, and he didn't. I think his back he was riding him like a bareback bronc, just the entire ride, just like no idea how you even keep your hand in the bull rope. Like I didn't know they made rosin sticky enough to hold it in there.
No
Um,
kidding.
but that deal, I remember that because me and Keith went up there, and we had
Mhm.
started that like that all that week we rode. So we went to amateur deals like Shad Smith deals and stuff, and then we drove up to so we went to like Nebraska, and then we were kind of in the Midwest, Iowa. Then we shot up to Sheridan, and so we were at Sheridan on Friday, and then we were in Salinas, California on Saturday, and then on Monday we were in Arkansas at Klein's deal that he does, and
Yeah.
we drove it and it was just me and Keith. And we showed up to Sheridan. We were talking to like Mason and Zane and them. And Mason's like, no, dude, I'm flying. I was like, huh, who else is driving? They're like, nobody. Everybody's flying from Sheridan because tomorrow we're in Salinas. And we were driving. It was like 16 hours. And we literally couldn't stop the entire time. Hey there, folks. I want to tell you about my favorite cowboy hat brand, Sombrero Brands. As a professional bull rider, I know how important it is to have a hat that not only looks good, but can withstand the toughest rides out there. And that's exactly what Sombrero Brands delivers. Their hats are custom fitted and shaped to perfection, with a level of attention to detail that's hard to find these days. But what really sets Sombrero Brands apart is the fact that they're a family owned and operated business. Mark and Kendall Holler, the owners, and their daughter Sarah, who's only 13 but already a hat making prodigy, are all passionate about their craft. They know what it takes to make a cowboy hat that can stand up to anything the rodeo circuit can throw at it. And get this, the founder's grandfather, Polly Holler, was born and raised at South Camp on the 4 Sixes Ranch. These folks have got cowboy blood running through their veins, and it shows in every hat they make. That's why I'm proud to have Sombrero Brands as a major sponsor for my podcast, the Rodeo Wagon Podcast. So if you're in the market for a hat that's tough enough to handle anything the rodeo throws at it, give Sombrero Brands a try. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. So we're on our way from Sheridan, Wyoming to Salinas, California, and that wasn't anything exciting at Salinas, but we showed up an hour before the perf started and we drove all night long. When one of us was driving, the other was sleeping. But then the interesting part was when we left Salinas, and we were a little ways from Albuquerque, and the brake line of my car went out, and I was driving a 5 speed, so we whipped in to this little shop that just happened to be like it broke down. It was actually we pulled into a gas station. We were leaving the gas station that happened, and we looked around, and there happened to be a shop literally right next door to this, and we're in New Mexico, so we have nowhere to go. We pull into that shop, and he's like, "Well, I can get the brake line tomorrow from O'Reilly's, but it'll be tomorrow at 8." And Keith looked at me and said, "What would Dakota and Quentin do?" I said, "You're
Oh
right. We're gonna
God.
send it. We're sending it." So we drive, and Keith is his first trip ever even driving a 5 speed. So I'm like, I'm not letting you drive. I will drive all the way home. And we hit Albuquerque rush hour in the morning time without any brakes. And we're just downshift. I'm downshifting and then pulling the e-brake, and people are cutting you in front of you. And it was wild. We drove all the way there, got back home, and then we get home and then we head over to Arkansas the next morning. But so there's still times, if you're PBRing where you freaking take some trips too.
I
Especially if
gotta.
it's rich too. If you got a lot of money, then flying, once you've seen the
Mm.
country and we've seen the country, then flying is kind of nice every now and again.
Oh yeah, especially like if I was gonna PBR, I think I would especially if you're on tour. I think flying would be the way to go because you'd spend so much more time at home, and that would be what would be the best for me, I
The
think.
really nice part is where we live, and you're in Arkansas.
Hmm.
You're not far,
Yeah.
which is kind of in a centralized place. There's a lot of UTBs and stuff where you're only 12 hours away. Like,
Yeah.
if you live on the East Coast or you live on the West Coast or
Hmm.
you live in North Dakota or Montana, then it kind of makes sense. Probably half of the deals or more are going to be flying distance, whereas we're kind of in a centralized place, so it's not bad.
Yeah, that's true. But I got a story for you about Albuquerque that you'll that you'll enjoy. So, me and Mason and Dalton Sylvie, we uh, we were hanging out one night, and um, I was traveling with Garrett Tribble at the time, and he'd made the NFR, and it was that's what we was hanging out. We was hanging out watching the NFR, just chilling out, doing whatever. Well, that night Garrett calls me and he's like, "Guess what, old bud?" I was like, "You won the round?" He's like, "Yep, got the old round to win." I was like, "Heck yeah!" He's like, uh, "Yep, I got spotted demon tomorrow or something like that." He had him. I'm pretty sure he had spotted demon the next day or something. But we all started throwing it around. We was like, "What do you guys got going on?" Next couple of days, we're like, "Nothing." Mason's like, "Well, Uh, I gotta be back Friday for like what's Chad's big bull riding in
Up
North Dakota?"
in Bismarck.
Yep. So he's like, "I just gotta be back to go to Bismarck." And I was like, "All right, well, let's look up flights, see how much it'd take to get us out there to Vegas for a couple of days." So we looked it up, and it was like $1,200 a piece, and we're like, "Oh, no way, we're not doing that." So he kind of looks at me, look at each other. He's like, "Well, you got that Prius. We can drive it for way cheaper than that." So me and Sylvie, we all kind of look at each other and we're like, uh, we're wanting someone to say no, but we wasn't going to be the one to say no. Or like, I wasn't going to say no. He wasn't going to say no. Sylvie wasn't going to say no. So all of a sudden we decided we was going to leave for Vegas at like probably midnight one night. So we get in Oklahoma, about Big Cabin, and uh, Sylvia pulls over and we sleep for a couple hours, and then he wakes me up. He said, "It's your turn to drive." I'm pretty sure they thought I was gonna turn around and come back home. Nope, back towards Vegas we went. So we get we get driving. I probably drive 4 or 5 hours while they're sleeping. They wake up, and uh, this is not very long after Mason got married. So, and we didn't tell me and Mason, we didn't tell our girlfriends. He didn't tell his wife. We just spur of the moment type thing. So
That's gonna go well.
you wouldn't believe it, but they were super upset with us.
Yeah, I don't know why.
They they thought it was a very bad idea. So that's the moral of the story is we got all the way to Albuquerque and turned around, and we got gas and McDonald's at Albuquerque and turned around, so neither one of us got divorced.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard part of that story. That's hey, that was a wise decision. Now, it
It,
didn't
it
start off
was.
with a wise decision, but it ended with one.
See, gosh, that was wild.
Man, that's crazy. I remember one time it was me, Quentin, Dakota, and Mason, and we were going.
Mhm.
It was at Chad Burgers in North Dakota. It wasn't Bismarck. It was Newtown, and we were
Oh
going.
yeah.
It was like a blizzard, and we were driving on the highway, You couldn't see, 10 feet in front of you. You couldn't see it all. And I remember at that time, Mason was driving and Dakota was in the passenger seat. Me and Quentin were in the back. And so then Dakota's like, I want to drive. And so Mason's like, all right, I'll let you drive or whatever. And they get out and they're standing there talking to each other in the middle of the freaking interstate. We're parked in the middle of the interstate in a freaking snowstorm. Quentin is freaking out. He's like, we're going to get killed. A semi's going to come and run us over. I wasn't freaking out, but not outside, but I was on the inside. So I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what's about to happen.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
They switched it. They ended up switching, but they stood out there for like, I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes. It probably was only 3 minutes. It felt like 20. Did that. We went there and it really shows too, like once we got there and everything, like the kind of guy Mason was, is after the first perf, it was like, because Newtown is like it's a casino, they have an arena, it's like a little facility, a hotel that's connected. So everybody stayed there. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. Well, everything's shut down at that point. Like everything shut down. And everybody was starving. And Mason went up to the pizza people that were making pizza and they were shutting everything down. And he's like, I want a pizza. And they're like, sorry, we're closed. We already cleaned up. And he's like, I'll give you $100 for a medium pizza or something like that. And sure enough, they started that sucker right back up.
Well, it was turned off.
He ate like one slice. Everybody else, he's like he's feeding all these little birdies because at that time he was on tour, and that was nothing. Everybody else is flat broke,
Yeah.
That was, but yeah, wild times.
That's the thing that I like about traveling so much is you get to have all them stories. I think that's what's kept me on the rodeo side of things so much more is just you get to make your own schedule, and you get to kind of visit what part of the world that you want to see, you know what I mean?
Yeah, heck, you gotta go to Alaska. That was pretty cool.
That was one of the coolest places I've ever been. It was cold and cool in more ways than one. It's like 45 degrees there.
It's kind of crazy just where, even rodeo takes you. Like I went to Saudi Arabia. I know a lot of guys have gone to Australia, and obviously we know people from those places, but not Saudi. I don't think there's any Saudi bull riders. Or I don't even know how many guys in Alaska ride.
I don't know. They said that they'd had a bull riding before, but or they had like little rodeos, but that was the first type of big bull riding that they'd seen from what it sounded like. So that was super cool to be a part of.
Yeah, and Zane, he did a deal down in Hawaii one year. He was doing that movie or whatever, and they got on bucking bulls in Hawaii. Do they have any pro rodeos in Hawaii?
I think I did see one, but I don't know if it's still there. But I think I seen one a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure. That would be cool to go to.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that's one of the things too. Like even me, like when I came up, because I didn't start riding until I was late, and so like I have that immediate group of guys, that like we all like when I started, I remember right when I first started, you and Mason, we were at Springfield, and you were like 96, and Mason was like 95 or something stupid like that.
I
we were
I remember that. Mason was 91 and 93, and I was gonna have to be like 104 points to beat him. And I was like, who is this guy? What is even going on? That was so much fun.
Yeah, those were the days. But then it kind of, I very quickly I went to the PBR and kind of it was Mason was there. That was one of the cool, especially my first time on tour and stuff. That time I just was so new. I mean, heck, I didn't even know anything about rodeo or anything, and then all of a sudden in 4 years I get on tour for the first time. Like it just happened so quick, and then I saw a lot of you guys, Cole Fisher, and a lot of guys going the rodeo route, and I kind of went the PBR route, and obviously Keith ended up coming and doing PBR. Dakota's kind of done both, and same as Quentin and stuff. But I guess I could really see that because a lot of the guys I know, pro rodeo or just go to freaking Shad Smith deals or NFPB and make quite a bit of money.
That's the thing about it anymore is you can go really anywhere you want. Like whatever your goals are, you can ride bulls and make a bunch of money now. There's so many places to go. It's really just whatever you want to,
Yeah, like
whatever trail you want to
Dakota
take.
Wilson in like 3 months or I don't know, 2 months this summer. He made like 36,000. He was saying
Yeah.
TVs, and that's just in a short little period going to deals up north in a PB events. I mean, and there's places like that all over.
Oh
I will
yeah.
say that I don't know that the money is in bull teams unless
Mhm.
you have that name and you're kind of tied in with the right guys that are bringing bulls.
I'm
Seems like they
I'm
ride
not
it.
a I think that's the difference is they ride so many bulls and like you got to be 90 something to place, you know.
Yeah, there's one in Arkansas. Dakota just went to, and he said be like 90 to even make any money.
Yeah. And which I mean you get to pick your bull, but
If it's bring your own rider, right? Yeah, yeah. The bring your
yeah.
own rider, you get matched up. For a tall guy like me, I'd just sooner not do that.
I for me I don't like doing it either. I get I got conned into it this coming weekend, but I'm not a huge bull team fan, really. I'd rather I'd rather just draw
Contract
them.
makes sense, but
Yeah, yeah,
on that side of things, I guess it makes sense. It's probably healthy to have both. It's probably good.
yeah.
It helps the bull industry, and you see
Oh,
guys
definitely.
who've never gotten into the sport, and now they have some bucking bulls and are able to actually justify doing it.
Yeah, and then things pay good too. And bull teams,
Joe
you
Anderson
got
made a lot of money on bull
yeah,
teams.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Well, heck yeah, man. It's been awesome having you on here. We'll definitely do it again.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it.
I haven't seen you in a minute. We're definitely gonna have to do this in person. So when I
Oh yeah,
get healed up and stuff, we'll get back on the road. We'll do some of that. I don't.
heck,
I've thought about years getting my pro rodeo card because there's times where even going on these PBR runs where like you legitimately, if you have your card, you could enter stuff on the way, and you're gonna be gone
oh
already.
yeah,
It's not gonna like affect how much you're home. So we'll see. I
yeah.
haven't I haven't pulled the trigger, but I've definitely I saw some value in it. There's a few guys that are doing it now, and seems to be pretty decent.
I just ended up with my PBR card, so we'll
Oh,
have
nice.
to use it too.
Yeah, heck yeah,
So
and it's the same deal. It's like I forget who we were talking to, but even if you're a priority guy, and you're going priority. Those velocities and stuff like they pay good, and if you're not
yeah, yeah,
somewhere else, you might as well freaking go 20,000 at a bull riding. Even
yeah.
in
And
the
that's the thing is they add so much, you know.
thorn pros even pay pretty decent too. So
Heck yeah.
but as far as like making it going to NFR and stuff, that's a one reason is like if I know if I get my card, then I'm gonna get that desire like, hey, I'm gonna go all out, and then, man, I've
Man,
got kids and now going all out rodeo and going all out PBR. I don't know that my wife would want to go with me.
oh, she would be so mad.
I'm only gonna be gone for a few months, babe.
A few what? Few
Yeah.
yeah, a few months. That that is pretty tough though.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. When I was younger, if I would have done it over again, I probably would have spent a little more time in the rodeo instead of just
Hmm.
diving off gate. But man, I had to drive and I still do, and my goals, stubbornness or whatever. It's not what I thought it would be when I started. It's nothing like that, but I still have
Hmm.
that I have told myself I'm gonna accomplish. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
one of those deals.
and you're not. It's not over until you lose the drive. I don't think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. If you still have the drive to do it, then it's
And
worth.
I honestly feel like myself personally, like getting hurt wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was probably more on the better end of the spectrum because it realigned my priorities. I was taking it for granted,
I
and
always told
then
myself if I ever get hurt, and
mhm,
if I ever get to the point where, like, if I were to get hurt, I wouldn't have to recover the way that I recover, because I've had 8 surgeries now. So I'm
right,
like I know what it takes to recover well and to come back in a spot where you're better than what you did before you got hurt. And if I don't have that drive to do that, then
yeah,
I think I'm about done. Like, but man, when you get hurt, like, it really tells you, like, where are you at? Like, do you want this? And
it it opened my eyes because I had to sit around and like this is what I do. I mean, I I'm addicted to rodeo, and if I wasn't going to a rodeo to ride bulls, I was going with my buddy Klein to help him put on rodeos and haul some of my young bulls and whatnot. So I was around it the whole time, and I had to watch it, and I got to see all sides of it. I got to see the young kids coming up, putting out the effort, and I got to see the guys just showing up and not putting out the effort. And you kind of you kind of take a little bit from every part of that. The young kids that fired me up. I wanted to, I got I remembered why I did it, and that it fueled my fire. And then the other guys, I was like, there's no need in wasting time. So if you're not gonna come back and be 100%, it might be it. You know what I mean? So that was a decision that I was faced with, and I could not come back. I,
yeah, for
I
sure.
missed it too much.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. What are your social media handles? People can follow Denton Fugate and watch what you're doing.
Uh, it's Fugate Denton on Instagram and just Denton Fugate on Facebook. And I think that's all I got.
That's all you got. Sweet. Heck yeah, man. Well, we'll definitely do this again. Man, I want to get at some point get a few of us together, maybe me, you, Keith, Sylvie, I don't know, a group of guys, and do one. That would be really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Get
We'll have
Klein,
some
let him have a
stories floating
beer.
in. Do what?
Get Klein on there, let him have a few beers.
Oh shoot, I don't know. I don't know. We might have to cut that one short.
Yeah, man, he cut short.
He he knows entirely too much.
Just, yeah, monitor how quickly he gets them. Like, it hasn't been
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll definitely do this again. It's been awesome having you, Denton. See you later, guys.